This morning, I hope you got a bulletin this morning. In your bulletin is a half sheet, and you can if you like to do that, you can follow along and fill in the blanks. I will have slides up, so you'll see it on the slide, so you can fill in. But this will be a different sermon too, because I'll be going to a bunch of various scriptures, and I'll be going to so many scriptures that they will be up on the screen for you, but they're also listed on that insert. When we think about Advent, we think about anticipation. Even like lighting the Advent candle. Here, like we have to wait, right? We don't light all four. We light one per Sunday, and so you have to wait. Next Sunday you'll see the third one lit, and next Sunday you'll see the fourth one. Then you have to wait until Christmas Eve to see the center one lit. So there's this anticipation. Well, the Israelites were in anticipation for a coming Messiah. And in the Old Testament, there's 60 plus prophecies about a coming Messiah, and about 300 references about the Messiah. And so this morning, what I'm going to do is we're going to take the New Testament out of the picture, and we're just going to look at the Old Testament, although I do have references in there for the New Testament. We're going to look at the Old Testament, and we're going to say, what did they know? What did they know about the coming Messiah before he ever came? Before we will look at the New Testament. I mean, the goal is as I go through these Old Testament passages, you, knowing Jesus, you would make the connection. You would be, oh yeah, he did that. Oh yeah, he did that. I'll do that a few times through this sermon, but you'll see the connection that's there. But a little story to start us off about anticipation. I'm sure anticipation, especially for the children, is really high at Christmas time. You know, when the tree goes up and the lights are going off and everything, and wonder what we're going to get for Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that you had those same anticipations at times when you were a kid. And I want to tell you about the Christmas I will never forget. I was a little kid, and I was the kid who... I don't know, Mom trusted me, so she would, one of my chores was I would wrap all the Christmas presents, not my own, but everybody else's, because she trusted that I would not tell the other kids what their gifts were, okay? So she would say, okay, there's some more presents in the bedroom, go wrap the presents. And so I'd go back and wrap the presents, and what my parents did was they had a few presents underneath the tree, but then on Christmas morning they would bring more out of the bedroom kind of thing. We'd usually have mostly clothes, but usually a big gift for each kid, something like that. So I'm back in the bedroom wrapping these gifts that I found in the closet. I'm wrapping these gifts, and then you'd have to put them back in the closet or underneath the bed or someplace where you'd hide them. And I thought, well, these ones would be best to hide underneath the bed. So my mom and dad had one of those with a bed skirt, and I lifted up the bed skirt, and I was going to slide those in there. But on Christmas vacation, my dad took us cross-country skiing, and we had never done that before, and I fell in love with it. I was just like, this is phenomenal. And so I was on this all-out mission to get my mom and dad to get me a pair of cross-country skis. I mean, just like everything was about cross-country skis. I was just on nonstop. So when I'm picking up the bed skirt and sliding these gifts under there, I see this long object under there, and I went, oh, and I put the thing back down, and I thought, I'm going to get some cross-country skis. And anticipation just rose to the top, and I was just like, oh, I was already thinking of Christmas Day, and we lived on 40 acres of land. I was thinking about all the different places I was going to cross-country ski. I was at the trails here, trails there. I mean, this was going to be the greatest Christmas ever, And so Christmas morning came out, and we opened up the gifts, and Mom and Dad kept bringing these gifts out from the bedroom and everything, and I'm just waiting. They hand me a gift, and and I'm just waiting. And all of a sudden, then Mom and Dad said, oh, that's everything, Merry Christmas. And in my heart, inside, I'm going, no, it's not. Wait a minute, no, it's not. But so I sat there for a little bit, and then my mom went off to the kitchen to, clean up breakfast dishes, and my dad went to the garage, and my brothers and sisters, they headed off to their rooms with all their stuff, and I just sat there in the living room going, this is not right. Something is not right here. And after it got really quiet, I snuck back into my mom and dad's room, And I lifted up the bed skirt to look underneath there, and these are the old beds that had wooden slats in them. And one of the wooden slats had fallen down, and that's what I saw, was one of those wooden slats. And it went from the greatest Christmas ever to the most disappointing. Now, I did eventually tell my parents that story and everything, and they never did get me a pair of cross-country skis. I think I bought my own at some point, but I tell you that story because there's great anticipation leading up to the coming of Christ. And if you can go to the next slide there, I'm going to give you 22 of these. There's 60 of them. I'm going to pretty rapid fire go through 22 of these of what they would have known. So the first one is the Messiah would be an Israelite. They knew he would be an Israelite. Not only an Israelite, but come as a prophet. Prophets always bring a message, but with that message came a judgment. So if you go to the next slide, Deuteronomy 18 and 19, God is speaking to Moses, and he says, I will raise up a prophet from among their brothers like you. So he's saying this prophet is going to be raised up out of the Israelites, and he's going to be like you, Moses, a prophet, a deliverer. And I will put my words into his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I have commanded him. And it will be that whoever will not listen to my words, which he speaks in my name, I myself will require it of him. So there's a connection to this message that if you don't listen to what this prophet says, it will be required of you. There's a judgment that is attached to this. So there's the first thing, that he would be an Israelite in a prophet form. Number two, next slide, the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. And I'll tell you a little bit about this story, So the three wise men come to the palace and say to King Herod, where is he born king of the Jews? And King Herod goes, huh? And he asks his wise guys, and the wise guys all raise their hands. They go, ooh, I know that one. I know that one. Micah 5:2, he's going to be born in Bethlehem. Go to the next slide. And it says, but as for you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth from me, for me to be ruler in Israel. And this is interesting. For his going forth are from everlasting, from the Ancient of Days. So you're told here that the one who is coming has come and has already been. He has already been. So number three, next slide, the Messiah would be born of a virgin. And you know this one pretty well. Isaiah 7:14, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. We sang that this morning. So they knew he was going to be an Israelite in the form of a prophet. They knew he would come from a town called Bethlehem. They knew he would be born of a virgin. This next one, number 4, that the Messiah would come with a mission. He would be on a mission. And this goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And we see this in the New Testament because what did Jesus do? He did battle against Satan. And he did battle against the demons. And they knew exactly who he was. But it takes us, and that made me think of that song, greater is he that is in me than he is in the world, kind of thing. But Genesis 3:15, God says to Satan, and I will put enmity between you, Satan, and the woman, and between your seed, Satan, and her seed. And that's singular, that there's one that is going to come from woman, and that one, he shall bruise you, Satan, on the head. That's going to be a mortal wound to you, Satan. And you, Satan, shall bruise him just on the heel. You're just going to bruise him on the heel. So let's go to the next one, 5, 6, and 7. This is a threefer. And it says the Messiah would come with to a visible temple with a forerunner of a messenger and with a message. And this takes us back to our study in Malachi 3:1. And we spent all that time talking about the messenger who was coming. And who was the messenger that was coming? John the Baptist. And we detailed that out because it's so important to know who the messenger is, because the messenger points to the Messiah, points to the Messiah. So back there to Malachi 3:1, it says, "Behold, I'm going to send my messenger," John the Baptist that we know, "and he will prepare a way before me," the Messiah. "And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple." So the temple has to be in existence at that time. Israel didn't always have a temple. Sometimes they were without a temple. So the Messiah would come when there was actually a physical temple. And the messenger of the covenant. He comes with a message of the new covenant. And we know that from Jesus being in the upper room and telling his disciples, "This is the new covenant. In whom you delight, behold, he is coming, says the Yahweh of hosts." So we know he's an Israelite coming in the form of a prophet. He's born in the town of Bethlehem. He would be born of a virgin. He would have a mission against Satan and his dominion. He would come when there was a temple. He would have a forerunner, and he would be a messenger. He'd bring the message of the new covenant. Number 8, the Messiah would come at a specific time. A specific time. This one is really neat. It takes us to Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. In Daniel uses this term, weeks of years. And the way you understand that is, how many days are in a week? 7, right? So if I have a week of years, how many years am I talking about? I'm talking about 7 years. It's just a way of saying it, weeks of years. And in Daniel, he talks about 69 weeks of years. So you take 69 times it by 7, you get 483 years is what you get. Well, it's interesting. Go to the next slide there. Daniel 9:25 says this, "So you are to know and have insight." Now you just stop right there, because he wants you to know this. This is not hidden. This is something he wants them to know. "So that you know and have insight that from the going out of the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem." So at a time, the Israelites were in bondage, in exile to Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was defeated by the Medes and the Persians, and King Cyrus was there. And King Cyrus made a decree. And he made this decree saying the Israelites could go back to Jerusalem. And we have 3 waves of them that go back. The first one is led by Zerubbabel, and they work on the temple. The second one goes back with Ezra, and they're concentrated on their spiritual vitality, revival. The third one goes back under Nehemiah, and they build the wall, kind of thing. So he is saying from that decree from King Cyrus saying you can go back and start to rebuild, and then it says until Messiah the Prince, and then he gives us the time. There will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 plus 62, 69 weeks. It will be restored and rebuilt with a plaza and a moat even in times of distress. So they were given a specific time in which the Messiah would come. Now this is really interesting because it's different. We're talking about the first coming of Christ. They're given a specific time when the first coming of Christ would come. Now what about the second coming of Christ? Are we given a specific time when the second coming of Christ comes? No one knows the day or the hour that he comes. But this first coming, he wanted them to know the specific time after that decree, 483 years, the Messiah, the Prince, is going to come. Number 9, the Messiah would ride into Jerusalem on the foal of a donkey. And you all know this, Palm Sunday. Jesus comes riding into Jerusalem on the foal of a donkey. They wave the palm branches, put down coats. They have big high praise for him coming into Jerusalem. Well, we go back to Zechariah 9:9, and it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Make a loud shout, O daughter of Jerusalem." That's what was happening. He prophesied that ahead of time. That's the atmosphere that's going to be there. "Behold, your king is coming to you. He is righteous." We know Jesus to be the only righteous one. "And endowed with salvation." His name actually means that, God saves. "Lowly and mounted on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a pack animal." Number 10, the Messiah would be betrayed by a friend. They knew he would be betrayed by a friend. We'll see that in Psalm 41:9. It says, even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me. They knew the Messiah would be betrayed by a friend, and that element of bread. And if you're racking your brain, right? They're in the upper room, and Jesus says to the rest of the disciples, he says, one of you is going to betray me. And everybody's going, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? Is it me? Is it Russell? And even Judas says that. He says, no, the one that dips his bread and eats bread with me. And Judas is the one who comes up and dips the bread and eats, and Jesus says, go and do what you need to do. So even they knew that there would be this betrayal of the Messiah. 11, 12, and 13 here, another threefer. The Messiah would be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver given to the potter through the temple. Through the temple. I love this one. So back to the betrayal of Jesus. Jesus has been betrayed. He's on trial. Judas gets to a certain point. He's like, oh, this isn't going probably maybe the way he thought it was going to go. He goes back to the Pharisees and the scribes, says, here's the money back. And they go, no, we don't want that back. That's on your head. And that foiled his plan. But as he's leaving the temple, he turns back and he throws the 30 pieces of silver, which they negotiated what it would be, the 30 pieces of silver back into the temple. And the priests are the only ones that can deal with that, probably in the part of the temple where only the priests can reside. And so this is blood money. So let's give it to the potter. Let's give it to the potter who they would have these fields of clay. They would dig out the clay and there would be these big holes. And then they would use the field for either dump or a common graveyard kind of thing. So let's give it to the potter for the potter's field because we need to use the potter's field. So that's the New Testament part of it. But if we go back to Zechariah 11, 20, 12, and 13, God is speaking, and I said to them, if it is good in your sight, give me my wages. But if not, never mind. So they weighed out 30 shekels of silver as my wages. Then Yahweh said to me, Zechariah, throw it to the who? The potter. That valuable price at which I was valued by them. That's kind of sarcastically said there. Yeah, that valuable 30 pieces of silver. That was worth 30 pieces of silver. And some have said that in that day, actually 30 pieces of silver was what a shepherd was valued at. And of course, Jesus calls himself the good shepherd. That's there. He says, valuable price, which I was valued at. So I took the 30 shekels of silver and I threw them to the potter, and then look at where the potter is. In the house of Yahweh. Where's the potter? In the temple. So, we knew he would be an Israelite, knew he would come like a prophet of Moses. He would be born in Bethlehem, born of a virgin, on a mission to do battle with Satan. He would come when there was a temple. He would have a forerunner. He would come with the message of the new covenant. He would come at a specific time. He would come on a donkey into Jerusalem. And he would be betrayed by a friend for 30 pieces of silver that was given to the potter through the temple. 14, 15, and 16, another threefer. The Messiah would be crucified, pierced hands and feet, and they would divide up his garments. And so this takes you to the cross. It also takes you to Psalm 22, 16 through 18. And when David would write these words, crucifixion wasn't even in existence. So under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, as he writes down these words that we read today, he was writing about something he didn't even know would exist. And so we see the scene where Jesus is on the cross, and specifically to hang somebody, you had to pierce their hands and their feet. But his clothing was divided up by the soldiers, but there was one piece of it that it was all one piece of fabric, and they didn't want to rip it up. And so the scripture says, what did they do? They gambled. They cast lots for that last piece. So if we go to We are in Psalm 22, 16 through 18. It says, "For the dogs have surrounded me." This is written 1,000 years before crucifixion happened. He describes it. The dogs have surrounded me. That's what would happen. That's a gruesome sight there, that there would be dogs, wild dogs, that would hang around at the foot of crosses, because there would be things that would fall off and they would take advantage of that. "And a band of evildoers has encompassed me." Well, that's what happens around crosses. That's usually used for evildoers, a deterrent. "They pierced my hands and my feet. I count all my bones. They stare at me." And that's what would happen also at a crucifixion. People would come out and jeer and stare and just make fun of those that were on the crosses. "And they divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots." So this list is getting longer. Let me do number 17 first. The Messiah would be abused. Messiah would be abused. Isaiah 50, verse 6. And this verse says, "I gave my back to those who strike me." Check. "And my cheeks to those who pluck out my beard." Check. "I did not hide my face from dishonor and spitting." Check. Who are we talking about? We're talking about what happened to Jesus. So you knew he was an Israelite, like a prophet, like Moses, a deliverer, born in Bethlehem, born of a virgin, on a mission against Satan. When their temple was there, a forerunner come before him with the message of the new covenant. At a specific time, he would come into Jerusalem on the foal of a donkey. He would be betrayed by a friend for 30 pieces of silver, which would eventually be given to the potter through the temple. He would be crucified. He would have his pierced hands and feet. His clothing would be divided up by lot, and he would be abused. Now, if you're listening this far, those math majors out there, okay, you're looking at this list, and this list is ever growing, and you realize that, wait a minute, what's happening here? If you're clicking that, wait a minute, that's Jesus, that's Jesus, that's Jesus, that's Jesus. If you're a math major, what's happening? The probability is rising, isn't it? Exponentially. I mean, it's just like, whoo, it's going off the charts by this time. If all of this is related to one person. And again, I'm telling you some of the New Testament end of it, but I want us to focus on what did they know prior to his first coming. So, number 18, the Messiah would have no broken bones. Messiah would have no broken bones. So I take you back to the cross scene. It's Passover. They don't want the bodies up there during their festival. So they asked if they could have those bodies taken down. So what they would do is the guards would come along and break the legs. If they broke the legs, then you couldn't pick yourself back up again to get another breath of air, and therefore you would expire quicker. And so they went to the one thief on the one side, broke his legs, went to the other thief on the other side, broke his legs. They came back to Jesus, and the guards, who are professionals at doing this kind of stuff, looked at Jesus and said, "He's already dead." But just to make sure, we're going to pierce his side. And they pierced his side with a spear, and out came water and blood. But the whole idea is that his bones weren't broken. They didn't do to him what they did to the others. And so if we look at Psalm 34:20, it says, "He keeps all his bones. Not one of them is broken." 19 and 20. The Messiah would die with the wicked, but be buried with the rich. I love this one. He would die with the wicked, but buried with the rich. So he's hanging on a cross between criminals. What would have happened, what was the likely thing to happen, is he would have been taken off the cross and he would have been buried with the wicked. He would have been buried in a common grave. He would have been buried with all the other criminals, maybe in a potter's field, just put in one of those holes. That's what would have happened. But at the last moment, this man named Joseph of Arimathea, who was a very rich man, who was a Jewish leader at the time, who was a follower of Jesus Christ, came up to Pilate and said, "Pilate, can I have the body of Jesus?" And Pilate says, yes. And so Nicodemus, or Joseph of Arimathea gets help with Nicodemus, and they take the body of Jesus and they take him to his tomb, a rich man's tomb, hewn in rock, a tomb that no one had ever laid in before, brand new tomb. And so when you look at this, he died with the wicked, but the last moment he was buried with the rich. Now we go to Isaiah 53:9. And we see this said 600, 700 years before it ever happened. So his grave was assigned with wicked men. Yep, that's true. Yet he was with a rich man in his death. That transaction, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. Number 21. The Messiah's body would not decay. It would not decay. The Jewish people believe that on the fourth day the body started to decay. We have that scene where Jesus comes to Lazarus' grave, and Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. And when he says, roll away the stone, he's going to call Lazarus out of the grave. Mary and Martha go, no, he stinketh. I think that's what they said. There's going to be a smell. Why? Because the fourth day. But what did Jesus say over and over and over and over again? He was going to rise on the third day, not a day of decay. And so if we go to Psalm 16:10, for you will not forsake my soul to Sheol. You will not give your Holy One over to see corruption or decay. And then, but God will redeem my soul with the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. Number 22. This is the last one, and then I'll pull them together here. The Messiah would perform miracles. Isaiah 35:5 and 6. And on the New Testament side there, I put too numerous to list. Just too numerous to list. All the references you can have in the New Testament about Jesus doing miracles. But as you read this verse here in the Old Testament, he says, then the eyes of the blind will be opened. Did Jesus do that? Yep. Everybody shake your head. Yep. The ears of the deaf, would they be unstopped? Then the lame man will leap like a deer. Yeah, take up your mat and go home. And the tongue of the mute will shout for joy. And for the waters will break forth in the wilderness and the streams of Rabbah. So we go through that and let me pull all these together. What did they know? And of course, again, I'm giving you just 22 of the 60 plus. He's an Israelite. Like a prophet, like Moses, a deliverer. Born in Bethlehem, born of a virgin, with a mission against Satan. Born when there was a time when there was a temple, he would have a forerunner. He would bring the message of the new covenant. He would come at a specific time. He would come on a donkey into Jerusalem, on the foal of a donkey. He'd be betrayed by a friend, and he'd be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. It would be given to the potter through the temple. He would be crucified, and he would have pierced hands and feet. His garments would be garmented off by lot. He would be abused, but he would have no broken bones. He would die with the wicked, but he would be buried with the rich. His body would find no decay, and he did many miracles. And that thing about the miracles is did Jesus do these miracles in private? Many of them he did publicly, didn't he? I mean, he fed the 5,000, he fed the 4,000. He did miracles in the synagogue, and everybody there witnessed it. He did miracles at festivals when everybody was around and everything. So these miracles were widely known and connected to this one named Jesus. Actually, people would travel miles and miles to bring their child or bring this one to Jesus that's there. But in the face of all of that, many rejected him as the Messiah. And I only gave you 22 of the 60 of what they knew. Now, let's go back to my story, my cross-country ski story. What if this would have happened? So this is what if. What if this would have happened? I'd have been still sitting in the living room going, what's going on? And out from the kitchen comes my mom and dad, and they're going, oh, wait a minute. We got one more. This is the big reveal. And they went back in and they brought out a pair of cross-country skis wrapped up. And I unwrapped them. And what if I would have went, they look like skis. They're kind of long like skis. They're slender like skis. They feel like skis. They got poles and boots that usually go with skis. I don't think they're skis. Yeah, my mom and dad would have went, what? We've heard this constant, cross-country skis, cross-country skis, cross-country skis. I tell you that because I wonder if that's what God thinks at times. Wait a minute, I've given you so much evidence that this is my son that I've sent as the Messiah. And I end with this. If the next slide is Luke 24. So, Jesus has died, buried in the grave, rose on the third day, and he's met with his, he hasn't met with his disciples, but the women from the grave. There's these two disciples that are on their way to Emmaus. As they're walking on their way to Emmaus, they're talking about everything that's happened over the last weekend, this Passover, and Jesus dying on the cross and being buried, and those women saying he's alive and everything else, and they're just rehashing the whole thing. And Jesus comes up alongside of them and says, hey guys, what's going on? And they look at him like, where have you been? They didn't know it was Jesus, but they were just like, you've been under a rock? You haven't heard what's happened in Jerusalem? You haven't read the Jerusalem Gazette? It's all over the front page. And so he plays a little dumb, and they explain everything out to Jesus about what happened, and this happened, and this happened. They give a great report. And then Jesus turns and says this to them. And Jesus, said to them, these two men on the road to Emmaus, O foolish ones and slow to heart, to believe in all the prophets have spoken. Look where he takes them to. He takes them back to the prophets. He takes them back to what they should know about the Messiah. Then he says, was it not necessary for the Christ to suffer these things to enter into his glory? Wait, guys, when you read the prophets, when you read about the Messiah, wasn't this part of the story? Wasn't this part of what you would know, that this one would suffer to see his glory? So it's very interesting. He takes them back to the Word of God. Of course, he's taking them back to the Old Testament because that's all they had. And then, this is the greatest part. This is where Russell and I would have loved to have been the two guys walking on the road to Emmaus, because this is going to be the greatest Sunday school lesson of all time. Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets. I mean, this is a comprehensive Bible study. Moses and all the prophets. He interpreted to them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. So, and again, remember, we don't have the New Testament. We just have the Old Testament. So when he says all the scripture, he's talking about the Old Testament here. And he takes them back to the Old Testament, and he says, this is the Messiah. So I put this is the only application you have here. How not to be foolish and slow. I don't want Jesus to say to you or to me, oh, foolish ones and slow to heart. I don't want that said to us. How do I not be foolish and slow in what I believe about the Messiah, about Jesus Christ? Not only now his first coming, but then him proclaiming about a second coming. And there's only one solution to this, is that you need to spend more time with him. You just need to spend more time with him. We're coming up on a new year. Sometimes you make resolutions. Maybe this could be one of those. I need to spend more time with Jesus, so I'm not foolish or slow to heart. For some of us, that might mean I need to make it to church more often this next year. Because when I'm in church, I hear about God. When I'm in church, I'm around God's people. When I'm in church, it puts me in the frame of thinking about God. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's joining a Sunday school class. Because in Sunday school class, they open up the Scriptures and they study what the Scriptures say. And that gives me another opportunity to think of and know more about God and about Jesus. Maybe it's joining a life group. Maybe it's resurrecting your quiet time, where it's just you and God alone in the mornings or in the evenings. And you open up your Scriptures and you read and you pray to Him. But that's the only way. Or one more I had thought about was even getting together with other brothers and sisters in Christ specifically to talk about God. But that's the only way that we do not become foolish and slow to heart, is that we have to spend more time with Him, reading what He has written and around others that can help us understand what God's Word says. Because where do we go back to when we talk about the babe in the manger or the coming King? We go back to His Word, what has been given to us. I also wanted to end with this, is that I hope this morning that as I went through those 22 things, is that you realize that the faith you have as a Christian is not a blind faith. And it's not a leap of faith. Well, there's a lot of evidence that you stand upon on your faith that Jesus is the Messiah. It's just overwhelming. And so with that, we are coming to our time. It's the first Sunday of the month.